Welcome to Power CEOs, the truth behind the business. I'm Jen Gaudet, your fearless host, entrepreneur, investor, and business strategist. Why are we here? Because iron sharpens iron. And when we bring industry leaders and experts, entrepreneurs and visionaries to share what's working in business and even some of what's not, we all learn and grow. As a result, our businesses grow, and that impact ripples out not only to just ourselves, our teams, and their families, but also to our communities and our world. You're in for a treat. I'm really excited about our guest today. We have a visionary entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Mad Events Media, a company that's dedicated to revolutionizing event marketing, scaling profitable and purpose-driven experiences worldwide. Pedro Jerez, welcome to the show.
So excited to be here.
Okay, so let's just start with events. Okay. Why events? What is it about events that is so special when we're talking about business?
I think just one thing that I can throw out there really quickly about this is that Google recently put out a study called 7-11-4. Have you heard about this?
Yes, actually.
Yeah, it's 7 hours of content over 11 different touch points across 4 different platforms. And that's on average, right? For someone to become a customer across all of the data that they've accumulated through their advertising.
That's a lot of time too.
That's a lot of time, right? And events literally hit on all 3 of those categories. And so it's a really incredible, powerful tool to create raving fans of people who are just ready to buy from you.
And you don't just host events, you host experiences. Talk to me a little bit about the difference between the two.
Anybody can throw on an event. An experience is like everything is extremely thoughtful and by design, like nothing is left to chance. So that by the time that someone gets to the end of that experience, there's an inevitable outcome that someone wants to do, which is ultimately become a customer, That's when marketing does its job. Marketing does its job when sales, all they need to do is say, hey, is this something that you've decided you already want to do? And someone says, yeah, I would love to do that, right? Mm-hmm. That means marketing did its job, right? And so that's what I would call an elevated event, an event that's been really thoughtful and designed from the ground up.
And so let's break that down a little bit further, because some people think, oh yeah, I've been to an event, I can do this. Yeah. I know you've experienced that before, yeah, well, and it doesn't exactly go the way they think it's going to go.
Yeah, well, the first time that I really got an appreciation for this was I started my career working for Tony Robbins. And the first time that I saw the syntax for Unleash the Power Within, which is an event that Tony's been doing for close to 40 years. And, most papers like 8 by 5, something like that, 8 by 11 or something like that.
8 by 11. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And these papers were like extremely wide. And it's like minute by minute playbook, literally over the course of 4 days. And if you hold the playbook in your hand and then you watch Tony on stage, it literally matches to the T. And it was several pages of this, like the entire thing entirely by design. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something more to this than, hey, let's gather some people and talk about stuff.
Mm-hmm. Imagine that. But it's not just about what's happening on the stage either. It's thinking about every friction point along the way. What is it like once they register? How do they feel like they're being handheld through the experience? How do you create those moments, even when it's not from the stage, that people are like, I don't want to leave. How do I continue this? Like, talk a little bit about behind the scenes, some of the prep that goes into that.
Well, I think one of the questions, for example, like if you know that you're starting off with a complete stranger and like your goal at the very end, like there's transformational events where they're just fulfillment events and you're just there to deliver. And there's also what's called like conversion events, right? Events that are designed to actually convert. Either one, independent of what you're doing, there's a belief chain that's ultimately taking place along the way, right? So if you're taking a complete stranger, and at the end of the event, you want that person, you want to invite them into your world, you want them to know that that's something they want to do, then ultimately, from very first exposure all the way through, like the question is like, what do they need to believe ultimately along the way to get to the end of that experience and know that it's something that they want to do, whatever that next thing is for you. Like it should be the next logical step in the journey, right? So like if you see an ad and then you get to a landing page about purchasing an event and joining an event, how does that become the next logical step? And once you purchase it, how do you actually start to create engagement, right? And have people want to know, like, whatever it is that they're going to be offering at the end. I already know I want to do this because that we started establishing certain beliefs along the way, of how about like during the actual event, I think about a conversion event, like an analogy I'll give is like if you had a balloon, right? And you're just like blowing air into that balloon. You want to get it to the point to eventually where the balloon just pops, right? And the balloon popping for me represents someone making a decision that they know is in their best interest. And what happens so many times, why so many people do events and maybe don't get the results that they want, is that they might do certain things to like add air to the balloon, right? But then they're deflating it. They're deflating it by maybe overteaching, or it might be a wide range of different things that can ultimately kill the conversions on the back end.
You are a genius at this. This is what you do. You are really masterful. How did you get here?
A lot of trial and error and a lot of really amazing mentors. I think it all started for me working for Tony, going to almost every single event that he did over the course of 4 years. And so I got a chance to see what a multi-9-figure event-based business looked like from the inside out. And that was really the beginning of my journey. And that really opened a lot of doors to then work with some really incredible people who started trusting me in really big ways in their business. From writing all the copy to then designing the strategy to then being their right hand. And it just started kind of progressing in leadership, as I was growing in my own career. And like just having to solve for problems in real time, like some will run an event and someone will say, oh, we can't get more than X amount of people. But I'm like, but why? Right. So like, I feel like my superpower in life has always been able to take a look at a really complex problem and somehow be able to dissect that and come up with a way to approach solving that problem. I don't know, it's the way just my brain has always worked. And along the way, I've been able to now have ran some of the largest virtual and live events in the entire, info industry, the thought leadership industry, coaching industry. But a lot of trial and error and a lot of hard work,
So one of the things that people always ask me is, okay, or they interact and they say, it's really tough. I just had this big fail. What was the biggest fail you had when you started doing this for yourself? And how did you pick yourself up? Because that resilience and that ability to do so is a really big struggle for a lot of people.
I think for me, my biggest failure was getting what I thought I wanted, just to realize that I missed the mark entirely. And that's when I made my first $1 million.
So I want to hear more. How did we miss the mark entirely?
Ever since I was a little boy, I knew I was meant to do a lot of big stuff. I was 5 years old. Me and my dad were walking through the MGM Grand Casino. We saw $1 million in cash, which was the prize that the casino was advertising. And I looked at my dad at 5 years old. We were wearing matching suits, classic Men in Black. And I said, in Spanish, I'm going to be a millionaire. And he looked at me and he just smiled. And that was the moment that bonded me and my dad forever. It set me off on a dream, but it also set me off in wanting to make my dad proud. And so much of what drove me, so much of my life was like that ambition. And fast forward almost 20 years later to the T, when that finally happened, my dad was there to witness the physical materialization of that. And there was an event that I did for myself, had over 220 people there. And I had 220 people around a ballroom basically sharing what they were taking away from these last 2 days. And people shared incredible things. I was feeling incredibly emotional. I see that my dad's by the entrance of the ballroom. It was in New York, so he was there. He was invited. And I see tears coming down his face. I've seen that man cry 3 times in my whole life.
Wow.
That was one of them. And I was like, I did it. I achieved the thing that I wanted to achieve, made my dad proud. I go to bed, I wake up the next day, and the first question that comes to my mind is, now what?
Oh, I got chills because it's such a common challenge for people. I've had this goal, I've worked for this goal, I'm an achiever, I did this, and then what's next? So what was next?
What was next is refunding people a lot of money, shutting it down, and going on a soul's journey.
Hmm.
Um, Something wasn't right. I didn't know what that was, but I knew I just had to go and figure it out, and that would guide me to wherever it is that was meant to be guided. And that took me all the way to Thailand, to where I met um, my spiritual mentor, and he gave me the greatest gift that any other human being has ever given me in my life. And it was showing me that everything that was causing me disease, or that was bothering me, that was just a reflection of something that was going on inside of myself. Everything I wanted to blame people for. I was like in one of the most beautiful places in the world, just feeling incredibly depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, something's not right here. And he just kept on gently mirroring me, mirroring me, mirroring me. And in that, I found an incredible gift, which was just freedom in my own body. It was like 6 months of spiritual boot camp. And that then led to meeting my next mentor, which was kind of like what I would call my business spiritual mentor.
That's really powerful. And sometimes when we do that, we go through this soul searching, we go through mindset work, we do so much inner work. And I love that you brought that to the forefront, because a lot of times I work with a lot of clients, and I always tell them you have to do the inner work first. It's not going to happen. The next level, it requires us knowing what we actually want and understanding and working through that stuff. And sometimes it's 3 steps back or 10 steps back to do exactly that: spiritual journey, mentorship, whatever that may look like, so that we can break through and have a clear understanding of why we're here and what we want to do next. We do have to take a brief break, but we will be right back, folks, with more after these messages. Okay, so